Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So chant a little bit more, Hare Krishna, and then we'll read a little bit about Krishna. We'll read the book. I'm going to read the book. Not part of the book, not the whole book right now. Part of the book. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. You know how sometimes people, they write a book. They come up with this kind of fun and interesting story, and they write a book. And then sometime later, there might be a movie that comes out based on the book. Krishna. So, this is the book, and there is a movie. This is the book, and there is a movie. So, when you know the book, then if you read the book, then you're ready for the movie. Hare Krishna. So, the devotees who are studying the writings of the acharyas, and the most recent and notable acharya is Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. By reading that book, you know the script. So, and there is a movie, and it will unfold. So, it's like the same story. It's not a new story. But by reading the book, we kind of refresh our awareness of. So when the movie unfolds, and it will, we've already read the book. we know how it ends. Well, in one sense, ends. How it unfolds. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. For example, the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains that God appears, to re-establish a healthy path for society, religious principles. And usually there are persons in powers of control who need to be removed. They're not necessarily benevolent personalities. They have other motives than protecting and nurturing society. They're more like parasitic. So reading Bhagavad Gita, you understand, okay, that's the book. It was written, actually, the movie came first. The Battle of Kurukshetra took place 5,000 years ago, and then the book appeared. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? They're connected. So, in the material world, there's a timeline. In the spiritual world, it's all happening simultaneously. But that's another thing. But, so now we have the book, the Bhagavad Gita, and the movie is going to replay again. The inimical forces, parasitic types, they're going to be removed, and then society will flourish without unnecessary disturbances coming from problems of mismanagement. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. We know because we read the book. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. A devotee of the Lord isn't necessarily going to be actively involved in rooting out, on the political platform. Although Arjuna was very actively involved in dethroning the rulers that were causing disturbances. But not everyone. God makes the arrangements. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. The devotee, in any case, whether they're actively involved politically in rooting out the bad guys, whether they're acting there or they're just a simple devotee chanting Hare Krishna and milking a cow or something, or raising a family or whatever, the goal of it, the whole perfection of it, is to simply remember Krishna. Now, there's different ways to remember Krishna. Some people remember Krishna and are aware of Krishna, but they don't like Krishna. Kamsa was like that. He was so Krishna conscious, that's all he could think about was Krishna. But when he saw Krishna, he thought of an enemy and an adversary and a competitive situation where he had to destroy Krishna. But he was thinking of Krishna. So he said, well, this chant Krishna, think of Krishna. Well, that's not recommended by Krishna. To remember Krishna in a loving relationship. Most dear personality. Actually, the life of all that lives is Krishna. So if you don't like the life of all that lives, well, Hare Krishna. You can go hang out in the Brahmajyoti or something. You can be spiritual in nothingness. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. So I was at a gathering yesterday, and it was really sweet. It was a lot of kirtan ras. Different devotees led kirtans, and it wasn't just a musical performance. It was a lot of calling out for Krishna. Wow, it was really nice. A little bit of dancing here and there too. Wow, it was really nice. And there was one devotee that just kept chanting. It could have been japa, the way they were chanting the mantra with kartals. It could have been japa. It was just a little slower than the japa might be. And I mean, it was like, wow, you could hear each syllable, every word. And it wasn't a musical performance. It was a really powerful vibration. Krishna. It's like, wow, you could like, it was like all the pastimes were in there. And I was like, whoa, it was really, they were all good. And they were all good kirtans. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. It's funny, one of the devotees' mothers is visiting from the Midwest, and he brought her to the meeting, and she's familiar with Krishna consciousness. Her son's a devotee, but boy, she was really great. She just she wanted to get up and dance, and she's chanting the mantra. It was really a lot of fun. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Happy to see her son, obviously. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And then there was a little bit of discussion. One of the devotees wanted to talk about Varnashram Dharma and how important it is. Prabhupada wanted it. And why isn't it happening in the West? Or why isn't there Varnashram Dharma? And they were quite frustrated. And what I said to him privately, not to the group, I said that I don't think the Varnashram Dharma will really take hold until the government and the economy goes kaput. And it's not sustainable. Everyone more or less knows, but everyone's hanging on. But it's not sustainable the way it is. It needs adjusting. And so when that happens, and there is, quote unquote, somewhat of a collapse, a notable collapse, it can't be fixed with duct tape and Elmer's glue. The seeds of Krishna consciousness are planted everywhere, all over. Because the problem isn't just like a problem in the U.S. It's an international problem, because the business and the economy and the monetary system, it's all international. And the biggest companies that are really dominating the economic scene, they're all international companies. So until that kind of, it's so big, when that finally, the rug is pulled out from underneath, for one reason or another, it's one way or another, then people will be looking for, wow, what can we do? What's the solution? How do we structure? What? It's going to happen. And the seeds of Varnashram Dharma are there to practice, to recognize the qualities of how successful society works. It's a natural system. People have these qualities naturally. Teachers, rulers, farmers, merchants, and laborers, people that help everybody else. Now become more clear the science of how to actually manage society, God-conscious society, non-sectarian God-conscious society. So it's not going to happen. An example of how that works is in Ukraine. I don't know all that much about what's going on in Ukraine, but from what I've seen, they put a few videos out, and the preaching that's going on there is really, really first class. Niranjana Swami, he's a sweet devotee, a really sweet devotee. And when he gives a class, he has a little Prabhupada Murti that he sits and he gives class. Niranjana, and Prabhupada's right there. He's really a sweet devotee. He's been preaching in Russia and Ukraine and Eastern Europe for a long time. And it's really, the devotees are very inspired. So in Ukraine, they had a civil war, their economy collapsed, the government, bye-bye, see ya. And what to do? And because the preaching had been going on there, and books being distributed, by the way, Niranjana doesn't speak a word of Russian. He doesn't speak Russian. And he's been preaching in Russian for years, he doesn't speak Russian. They translate. While he's speaking, they translate. And so they have really great farm projects, and it's really hustling and bustling, basing the economy to a large degree, many people, on the teachings that show how to manage a society, Varnashram management. So that's kind of like a portend of the future, of things to come. And Hare Krishna devotee yesterday was in so much anxiety. And he tries very hard. to try and beat the drum for Varnashram, but I don't think it can take hold until the stronghold of the present structure of society, unwinds. Like you pull on a thread on a sweater and you end up with a bunch of yarn on the floor, till it unwinds, comes undone. You really can't get this other thing going. Hare Krishna, and it's coming because we've read the book. We know Bhagavad Gita. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I was thinking about the relationship of my father and my mother, and they were married for 70 years. They really had a successful marriage like that. And, they were born in the 20s, and they were first generation of immigrants from Russia and Ireland. And I realized that I wouldn't be able, myself personally, to replicate the example that they were setting. I wasn't going to be able to do that because of who I am. I wasn't going to be able to do it. And I was thinking about how one time, I'm like maybe 13 or 14, starting to get a little interested in boyfriend, girlfriend things. And a boyfriend, he hopped on his bicycle and he rode his bicycle all the way from a whole nother little town. I mean, it must have been 20 miles on a bike to come over to the house in Howard. And we were at the house, and what are we going to do? Well, we can play checkers. So my mother was watching, she has a boyfriend. And I kept beating him. He could play checkers for nothing. He was terrible. He did all the wrong things with checkers. He couldn't concentrate. And I was like, let's beat the pants off of him playing checkers. And he was getting smaller and smaller and smaller, sitting there. And I was like, the champion playing checkers. My mother came up to me. She whispered in my ear and she said, let him win. It makes him feel good. Just let him win. And I realized I couldn't do that. Because my thought was, well, if he can't play checkers and win straight and fair, why bother to let him win? I didn't understand that was her secret in the marriage. That was her secret, is that he was always right. Even when he was wrong, he was right. That was her secret. And that's why they were together 70 years. She had it down. I knew I wasn't going to be able to do that. I had another kind of energy that I couldn't do that. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. But I see the value of it, of a relationship with a husband and wife. Just let him win. He can't play worth beans, but let him win. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. And then I was thinking of Gandhari and Dhritarashtra. How he was blind from birth, Dhritarashtra. And Gandhari didn't want to see anything that he couldn't see, which would have put her in a more superior position. She wanted to be subservient to her husband. So she wore a blindfold her whole life. And she couldn't see anything that he couldn't see. She voluntarily did that so that she could remain in that position of he's superior, which works. In married life, it's going to work. It works. Even if he's wrong, he's right. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. So I was appreciating my mother. She's such a chaste, faithful wife and mother. She was like Gandhari. And Dhritarashtra was wrong a lot of times. Oh, is he wrong? But oh no, she was faithful. And my father, I would see that he would say or do something and he was wrong, and I'd want to point it out, but and the times that I tried, boy, did he get angry. Oh, he got so angry. I mean, as a little child, I mean, we were walking one time and there was a big tree and it had hickory nuts all over it, and some of them were on the ground, and so I was walking with my father and I picking up the hickory nuts off the ground that were falling out of the tree. And he says, it's not a hickory tree, it's an ash tree. And I was like, it's not an ash tree, it's a hickory tree. And I showed him the nuts and he said, no, it's an ash tree. And I realized that I didn't have that same energy my mother had. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I was like, so then I was thinking about Gandhari. Well, if she wore the blindfold, didn't that impede her service to her husband, her practical service? Like, she couldn't, like, do things because she had a blindfold on. How was she going to cook or pick out his clothes? Or she couldn't do those things. And then I thought, well, they were in the royal family. They had servants. She didn't have to cook. She didn't have to pick out his clothes. She didn't have to do anything like that. And that her service was to support him like that. He was always right. And I was talking with someone and talking about my mother's relationship with my father. They saw what was going on and they started to laugh, and I said, boy, he hung the moon, didn't he? He put the stars in the sky and he hung the moon. In other words, he was like God. He couldn't correct him. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And he was Russian on top of it. Oh, jeez. Hare Krishna. At the table with the fist. He changed later on. He became very different later on, after life took its toll. My brother passed away early, and my mother came down with Alzheimer. He served her for 20 years. He changed. He changed a lot. Being right was not important to him anymore. It changed. What was important to him was feeling love without having to feel like he was God. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. They were good people. Yeah, I was really fortunate. Yeah, I was so fortunate. But I couldn't emulate their example. I couldn't do a Gandhari and Dhritarashtra program. I just couldn't do it. I had to find Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Little did I know at the time that Krishna was also trying to find us. Those of us that were trying to find him, he's also trying to find us. And so Prabhupada was empowered to find us. Give us Krishna. Woo! Krishna. Yeah. When you read the book, you kind of already know the plot, You know the plot. So you can appreciate the movie. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. All right, so we're going to read the book. Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda. This is, Uddhava visits Vṛndāvana. Uddhava visits Vṛndāvana. Thank you, Shiva. Okay, so Nanda Maharaj and all the cowherd men, they went to Mathura and they took care of business there. They got rid of the inimical forces. See, this is the playbook. They uprooted the inimical forces. Kamsa and his brothers, and they reinstated Ugrasen, Krishna conscious, pious king, religious, spiritual king. And but Krishna and Balaram are going to stay in Mathura because there's more to do. And they were born in the royal family, and Krishna says he appears to annihilate the miscreants and reestablish religious principles. So they're starting to do it, but there's a lot more to do. So they're staying, Krishna and Balaram are staying in Mathura. Nanda Maharaj returned to Vṛndāvana without Krishna and Balaram. He was accompanied only by the cowherd boys and men. Krishna. Hare Krishna. Whew. It was certainly a very pathetic scene for the gopis. Mother Yasoda, Srimati Radharani, and all the inhabitants and residents of Vṛndāvana. Many devotees have tried to make adjustments to Krishna's being away from Vṛndāvana because, according to expert opinion, Krishna, the original personality of Godhead, never goes even a step out of Vṛndāvana. He always remains there. The explanations of expert devotees is that Krishna was actually not absent from Vṛndāvana. He came back with Nanda Maharaj, as promised. Krishna. Krishna. Yeah. Krishna Chaitanya. When he was going to Mathura on the chariot driven by a Krura, and the gopis were practically blocking the way, Krishna assured them that he was coming back just after finishing his business in Mathura. He told them not to be overwhelmed. In this way, he pacified them. But when he did not come back with Nanda Maharaj, it appeared that he either cheated them or could not keep his promise. Expert devotees, however, have decided that Krishna was neither a cheater nor a breaker of promises. Krishna, in his original identity, returned with Nanda Maharaj and stayed with the gopis and Mother Yasoda in his bhava expansion. Krishna and Balaram remained in Mathura, not in their original forms, but in their expansions as Vasudeva and Shankarshan. Well, it has to be, because Krishna never leaves Vṛndāvana. That's where Krishna and Balaram, that's their home. If it appears that they leave there, then it's not the same Krishna and Balaram, because of the way they interact with their devotees. The kinds of interactions that we see in Vṛndāvana can only be in Vṛndāvana. It can't be anywhere else, because that's where they're manifest. The real Krishna and Balaram were in Vṛndāvana in their bhava manifestation whereas in Mathura they appeared as the Prabhava and Vaibhava expansions. This is the expert opinion of advanced devotees of Krishna. But when Nanda Maharaj was preparing to return to Vrindavan, there was discussion among him, Krishna and Balaram, as to how the boys could live in separation from Nanda. The conclusion to separate was reached by mutual agreement. They agreed to enter into the mood of separation. They didn't actually separate from Krishna. They agreed to enter into a mood of separation. Vasudeva and Devaki happened to be Krishna and Balaram's real parents. They wanted to keep them now because of the death of Kamsa. While Kamsa was alive, they were kept under the protection of Nanda Maharaj in Vrindavan. Krishna and Balaram were kept under the protection of Nanda Maharaj in Vrindavan. Now, naturally, the father and mother of Krishna and Balaram wanted them to remain with them, specifically for the reformatory function and purification, the sacred thread ceremony. They also wanted to give them a proper education, for this is the duty of the father. Another consideration was that all the friends of Kamsa outside Mathura were planning to attack Mathura. For that reason also, Krishna's presence was required. Krishna did not want Vrindavan to be disturbed by enemies like Dantavakra and Jarasandha. If Krishna were to go to Vrindavan, these enemies would not only attack Mathura, but would go on to Vrindavan, and the peaceful inhabitants of Vrindavan would be disturbed. Krishna therefore decided to remain in Mathura, and Nanda Maharaj went back to Vrindavan. Although the inhabitants of Vrindavan were feeling separation from Krishna, Krishna was always present with them by his Leela, or pastimes, and this made them ecstatic. Since Krishna had departed from Vrindavan to Mathura, the inhabitants of Vrindavan, especially Mother Yasoda, Nanda Maharaj, Srimati Radharani, and the gopis, and the cowherd boys, were simply thinking of Krishna at every step. They were thinking, Krishna was playing this way, Krishna was blowing his flute, Krishna was joking with us, Krishna was embracing us. This is called Lila Smarana, and it is the process of association with Krishna most recommended by great devotees. Even Lord Chaitanya enjoyed Lila Smarana association of Krishna when he was at Puri. Those who are in the most exalted position of devotional service and ecstasy can live with Krishna always by remembering his pastimes. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has given us a transcendental literature entitled Krishna Bhavanamrita, which is full with Krishna's pastimes. Devotees can remain in Krishna thought by reading such books. Any book of Krishna Leela, even this book, Krishna, and our teachings of Lord Chaitanya is actually solace for devotees who are feeling separation of Krishna. That Krishna and Balaram did not come to Vrindavan can be adjusted as follows. They did not break their promise to return to Vrindavan, nor were they absent, but their presence was necessary in Mathura. In the meantime, Uddhava, a cousin brother of Krishna, came to see Krishna from Dwarka. He was the son of Vasudeva's brother and was almost the same age as Krishna. His bodily features resembled Krishna's almost exactly. After returning from his teacher's home, Krishna was pleased to see Uddhava who happened to be his dearmost friend. He wanted to send him to Vṛndāvana with a message to the residents to pacify their deep feeling of separation. So Uddhava is a cousin, Krishna's cousin. He's the son of Krishna's father, Vasudeva. No, he's the son of Vasudev's brother. So he's a cousin. Right? Did I get that right? Yeah, the son of Vasudev's brother, and almost the same age, a cousin. Friendships and relationships with cousins can be very sweet. They're very sweet. Yeah. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Yeya tamam prapadyante, Krishna is very responsive. He responds in proportion to the devotee's advancement in devotional service. The gopis were thinking of Krishna in separation 24 hours a day. Krishna was also thinking of the gopis, Mother Yasoda, Nanda Maharaj, and the residents of Vṛndāvana, although he appeared to be away from them. He could understand how they were transcendentally agreed, and so he immediately wanted to send Uddhava to give them a message of solace. Uddhava is described as the most exalted personality in the Vrishni dynasty, almost equal to Krishna. He was a great friend, and on account of being the direct student of Brihaspati, the teacher and priest of the heavenly planets, he was very intelligent and sharp in decision. From the intellectual standpoint, he was highly qualified. Krishna, being a very loving friend of Uddhava, wanted to send him to Vṛndāvana just to study the highly elevated ecstatic devotional service practiced there. Even if one is highly elevated in material education and is even the disciple of Brihaspati, he still has to learn from the gopis and the residents of Vṛndāvana how to love Krishna to the highest degree. Sending Uddhava to Vṛndāvana with a message to the residents of Vṛndāvana to pacify them was Krishna's special favor to Uddhava. Lord Krishna's name is Hari, which means one who takes away all the distress from the surrendered souls. Lord Chaitanya states that there cannot be at any time a worship as exalted as that realized by the gopis. Being very anxious about the gopis' grief, Krishna talked with Uddhava and politely requested him to go to Vṛndāvana. Shaking Uddhava's hand with his own hands, he said, "My dear gentle friend Uddhava, please go immediately to Vṛndāvana and try to pacify my father and mother, Nanda Maharaj and Yasoda Devi, and the gopis. They're very much grief-stricken, as if suffering from great ailments. Go, give them a message. I hope their ailments will be partially relieved. The gopis are always absorbed in thoughts of me. They have dedicated their body, desire, life, and soul to me. I am anxious not only for the gopis, but for anyone who sacrifices society, friendship, love, and personal comforts for me. It is my duty to protect such exalted devotees. The gopis are the most dear. They're always thinking of me in such a way that they remain overwhelmed and almost dead in anxiety due to separation from me. They are keeping alive simply by thinking that I am returning to them very soon." Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare... I'd like to read that book. What's the name of it? What's the name of that book? I said he wrote that book. Hare Krishna. Krishna Bhavanamrita. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Krishna Bhavanamrita. I'd like to read that. Krishna. There's not enough time in a day. Oh, Krishna. Haribol. Krishna Chaitanya. Thanks for stopping by.